Hello and welcome everybody to the CODESYS webinar about CODESYS Static Analysis. My name is Michael Schwarz and I'm working at Product Marketing at CODESYS and I'm your presenter today. So first two items is maybe the general answer to the general question. It's about the PowerPoint copy of the webinar slides. So you can request the copies as a PDF via webinar@codesys.com. So just send us an email and you will receive the PDF files as an answer. And the second item is that we have a chat already online. So when you have questions during the webinar, just give us your questions via this chat functionality and we will try to answer it immediately during the chat. If it's not possible, so we will send you the answer after the webinar when we have the information available. So okay, let's continue with the webinar. So here are the 5 chapters of our agenda for today. So the first issue is that we will provide you some information about the fundamentals of methodology supported software development, where we speak a little bit about how to work with the static analysis tool in general. So then we present you the coding guidelines for reducing some weaknesses in the code, followed by the naming convention rules, which will lead to a more legible code. And finally, I will show you some metrics which can be used during the programming the IEC 61131 code. Let's start with the first chapter. So as you see on this slide, it's all about software quality. So the software quality in general is divided into 2 sections. The first one is the visible quality, which is visible to the end user of the software. And the second one is the inner quality of the software, where you have much more items which does influence the software quality. And as you see, the pure coding is also a part of the software quality aspect, and the coding quality is affected by the CODESYS Static Analysis tool. So you can improve the coding quality by using CODESYS Static Analysis. The CODESYS development system already supports the functional part of the programming, so you are able to provide full functional code with the CODESYS development system without CODESYS Static Analysis. So the Static Analysis tool fulfills the requirement that are not or non-functional. So there are requirements for a certain level of coding quality. And by this requirements, you can then decide whether the quality is good enough to release the software or whether you have to go in an additional loop during coding and improve the coding quality, which you have found here. The other issues or item is that you can do all the static analysis tasks as the manual tasks. The manual tasks are then more or less time consuming. They are selective. They depend on the person who is doing the walkthrough or the code review. So that's for the coding guidelines and the naming convention valid. The metrics themselves, they can also be calculated manually. So a certain person has to review the code, has to pick all the specific items in the code, and then he has to calculate the metric. So that's all done by the automated testing with the CODESYS Static Analysis. So it's not that time consuming, so you can do it more often during the development process, and it's then 100% reproducible because it's an automated test, and so it's not dependent on the person who is doing the code review or the walkthrough session. And by the automation of the static analysis, you can do also more tests at the same time. So at the moment, the CODESYS Static Analysis is able to provide more than 72 code guideline tests. We can offer you more than 61 naming convention tests and up to 27 code metric calculations, which are predefined at the moment. So these numbers are features which can be offered by the CODESYS Static Analysis. What's at the moment not possible is to add or to extend these numbers by own customer metrics or specific rules which you need to add from your side. So you have to step back here to the predefined static analysis set. In addition, there's no automated code correction because at the moment these weaknesses which we identify by the CODESYS Static Analysis, that are no functional errors. So the application is fully running also when you don't correct these weaknesses, and therefore there's no need to add an automated code correction by the tool, because that's a decision which has to be done individually, case by case, on each weakness we identify by the static analysis tool. So that's all for theory, for the fundamentals, and we continue with the first section of the tool with the coding guidelines. This slide is just for an overview which you can use later on when you receive the PDF files to look up which rules are supported right now. During the presentation, I will show you some of them, but this is just the overview so that you can have a short look right now what's possible and what's not possible. In this step, I would like to point to the online help of the CODESYS development system as well, which we will see later. So in the online help of the CODESYS Static Analysis, also of the demo version of the CODESYS Static Analysis, which is also available. So the online help will provide you all the information what kind of measurements can be done here. How to perform a static analysis, or in this specific case, how to test the coding guidelines. In the first step on the left side, you have to select the relevant coding guidelines which you want to use in your software development or in your specific project. Then you can negotiate these coding guidelines with the software development guys, or just make it as a requirement, as a mandatory requirement to them to fulfill what's requested, and then the software development has to follow these rules. They deliver their software iteration part or the complete software, and then during or as part of the delivery, the software development can perform static analysis or can perform an analysis of the coding guidelines. And with the CODESYS Static Analysis, they get either an SS message where you see some errors or warnings with respect to the coding guidelines, or if they already followed all the coding guidelines, there are no messages, and then that's the lower part here. The static analysis is already done. If there are some assessment messages, you have then two choices. The first one is that the weaknesses are accepted, and that can be done by adding some pragmas in the IEC 61131 code. The other one, the way you would choose more often, is to change the application code to follow the coding guidelines, and then you can do this in the next iteration, in the next sprint, when you want to use it during a Scrum process, and change the code and perform the static analysis again, as long as you have received the no message folder, and then it's the quality level which you have predefined, and the static analysis is then done finally. So let's see how that works in practice. So here I have the CODESYS development system with an example project. That's the Mayong project, which is also available for free in the CODESYS store. I've already loaded the project, and what I've done here is that I changed a little bit the settings of the windows. So on the upper window you see the error messages, the warnings, so the message window, and on the lower window there is this just standard message window where we have shown some standard metrics. So let's focus on the upper one. We want to do something in the area of the coding guidelines, and therefore we can use in the project settings the static analysis. So that's now a different view, as you might already know. So in the standard CODESYS, the static analysis is already available as a light version. So the package which you have to install via the tools package manager will bring you some more functionality to the static analysis light function. So when you have installed this package and when you have a valid license, the project information or the project setting information about static analysis will be extended by the package, and you have some more functions here. So in the first step we want to talk about the rules. The rules are presented here in a tree view, and in this tree view you can see all the coding guidelines that are predefined by CODESYS. So you can either choose one of them or multiple of them. It's also possible to make a selection a second time. So you see that the selection will change from a red sign to an orange one. That means that if it's a red sign, so the predefined priority of this setting is that this is later shown as an error, and if it's an orange check mark, then it's just a warning. So that means that the software developer must not follow this rule, but he has the option to follow it, and so it's then just a simple warning. So you can also do a multiple selection of some rules when you go to the upper level of this tree. So then the multiple selection is here, and when you want to use all the rules, you can do it also by one click. So that's very comfortable to do it here. So what could do is then to start with one or two or maybe three rules, and if they are all fulfilled in your code, select the second in the second step, the fifth or sixth rule, or finally you maybe want to follow all the rules. So that's totally in your hand, so you can make the settings like you want to have it in your project. So if there's somebody who is the expert in such rules in static analysis, he has the option to save the rule setup which he has provided, and then he can share it with every member in the development team. And that's something what I have already done here for the presentation today. So I've created myself three kind of rule settings. So for better demonstration, it's divided in the rules, in the coding guidelines, and in some metrics settings. And because I want to show the code guidelines at the moment, I choose or I pick this one with the code guidelines only. I just open it, and then you see it's predefined as I would like to check it here. Some mandatory rules we have to follow, some optional rules, and sometimes the rule is not mandatory for my project. The results then will just present the rules because I have not defined some naming convention and I have not defined some metrics beside this one. So I will make the check mark away and look if I have another one. No, that's the only one. So let's focus on the rules. And if I have now defined the rules that shall be used to check all the decoding here on the left-hand side, I have to go to the Build button. There's an additional menu item now by adding the package, and then you can run the static analysis. And because I've only defined the coding guidelines, also only the coding guidelines will be checked. And you see the program does violate a lot of coding guidelines because the negotiation between defining the coding guidelines and writing the program was not done up front, because that's a very old project. So the coding guidelines are completely new to them. If you have now this error, because it's a red sign here, if it's not a red sign and a warning, it's also shown here, but you see I have 0 warnings, so there are no coding guidelines violated which have been marked as an optional, but that doesn't matter. In the following, you should check now in the development process each of these errors or weaknesses, and for each weakness you have to decide whether you want to correct the weakness or whether you want to mark the weakness as accepted and that the weakness shall not be checked in the next round of static analysis. So you can do this also directly in the tool, so you can mark the weakness here, and you can tell the tool to go to the source position where this weakness was found. And you see the source position will open directly where the weakness was found. So unused type SF entry, here's the type SF entry, and now you can either think why it is not used. You can add some coding so that it is used, or you can simply use a fragma here where you say it's an attribute of the type analysis where you don't want to see, that's indicated by the minus, where you don't want to see the single error here, but therefore just have to run this again because the message has now disappeared. So I have to find out the numbering of the code, because to use the fragma I need to have this code guideline number. It's the 31. So that's exactly what I need here to add to my pragma. So it's the attribute of analysis, and I tell him that I don't want to use the 31 information in this case, and you see the attribute fragma is accepted because everything else is changed. The message is written here in gray. And when I run now the static analysis again, the first information is no longer the message that this entry here is not used, and you see it's disappeared. So the next one is the coding guideline 24, and here you can go the same way. Just open it, check whether that's an error here, a real error, so that you have to change the code, or you can add the attribute pragma already here, also here, and then exclude, in this case, the coding guideline 24 for this weakness here. So, and as I said, unfortunately, at the beginning, you have to do it for all the weaknesses that are found here. But in the second step, it will be less and less. So because the first step is here the biggest one. So in general, this is all what can be shown to the coding guidelines. You see in the window that the coding guideline bring you also some description. It brings you the object where the weakness is found, the position, and also which kind of project it is. So you can have a very simple navigation as you're used to navigate here in the message window. So that's the coding guideline game, and let's switch back to the presentation. The next thing we want to show is the check for the naming convention by CODESYS Static Analysis. There are at the moment 61 definable naming conventions which can be set with a prefix to make it more clear which kind of variable it is, so whether it's really a bool variable, so because the variable name is normally not dependent on the type. So here you can make prefixes to all these variables, and the process or the procedure is more or less the same as you are familiar now with the coding guidelines, and therefore I don't want to stress that again. Let's go to the live demonstration, and the live demonstration is also more or less structured in the same way. You go to the project settings, to the static analysis, and then you have here the naming convention window. So it's also a tree view, so you can see all kind of naming conventions which can be set, as I said, approximately 61. And then you can add here manually the prefix that you want to have here for the bool, or always a B as a prefix. And so you can do this for all these naming conventions. Also here I have prepared something with a reference here to the Beckhoff TwinCat application, because that's what I found in the web, that Beckhoff has here some naming convention guidelines on their web page when you want to program a SIL2 application. So I just used this one and I brought the information from the web page to the CODESYS Static Analysis. So the request is that the bool is always prefixed with a B, the bit with an N, and so I added here all the information from the web page. And the good thing is that I always have to do it once, because I can save this and I can store it and I can reuse it in the later project. So I accept now here the naming convention from Beckhoff, and I use the naming conventions also by running the static analysis. So the code is checked now according to these naming conventions, and you see here that there's an invalid variable name hold because there's a prefix N expected. So I close here the windows from the coding guideline, and I go to this hold value by the same kind of navigation, go to the source here and see, oh, it's hold, yeah, really there's an N missing as a prefix. So either I could add the N as a prefix because that's how we want to have it, or if that's for some reason not possible, it's the same like in the coding guidelines. So we can use here an attribute of the type now naming, and this attribute shall switch the naming check off, and when I run now a second time the static analysis with the switch off here, then the preset is here still there because I used the wrong quotes, so that's here off. Attribute naming off should work now. Let's see. And it is, as I said, so the first weakness is disappeared. So as with the coding guidelines, you have to do this now for all messages that are shown here. And as I said in the first step, that could be a lot. That depends how straight the programmer followed the requirements of the coding guidelines and of the naming conventions. Yeah, also here, enough for this presentation. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's enter the last one, which I want to show you for the CODESYS Static Analysis. It's the metrics part. At the moment, we have 27, I call it CODESYS metrics, which are available. So that they are not invented by CODESYS, but we have added them to the CODESYS tool. So there are standard metrics like McCabe, like Prater, Hellstedt, also some useful things like code size and number percentage of comments, which we have here. So it's also here your choice which kind of metrics you want to use in your project. The process or the steps are the same. So also here you have to define it and then you have to test it. The only thing I want to add here is that you could store the metrics results somewhere in your repository, for example, because you could use this metrics number during the development or during different releases to make a trend analysis. So how does the metric change when you have release 1, 2, 3 out in the field, or how does the metric change when you have a project, so development project running, which is 1 or 2 year development time. So there you can do some trend analysis with this data. So that's also dependent on how you're organized in your company or how you want to do it. So let's go to the CODESYS development system to show you how to use the metrics there. So the metrics are not displayed here in this window, therefore I want to make this lower one a little bit bigger, and the same thing as before. Go to project settings and the static analysis. Here you can add the metrics. So first decision you have to make is whether you want to have this metrics activated or whether you don't want to use it in your project. And then you can add some upper and lower limits, but you don't have to. So you can also say it's activated and you just calculate or count the code size. You calculate the number of calls, for example. You can make here some percentage of comments, so then you see how much you have. And for the first step, maybe you just simply select all of them. That could be an option to proceed. To see the basis of your code here. When you have selected all of them, just click then the OK button. So all the metrics are added in here to the standard window of the result frame. And then you can go to the build, static analysis, and then not run static analysis, but view the standard metrics. So in the background, then all the standard metrics are calculated for each function block here. And then you see the results. So that are the formal, the mathematical results, how your code is structured. For example, you can see here the McCabe with 26, 12, 9, 5, 5, 10, and so on. Prater also with some numbers, so you get a feeling in which range this code is, or which quality range the code is, let me say it like this. And then you could go to the project setting again, to the static analysis, and go to the metrics and maybe say, okay, for the comments, I want to have a percentage, something between 50 and 100% shall be commented. And then you can see here McCabe. So it's the worst one is 26. So from the theory, it's between 5 and 10 is a good one. but it's not a must. So you can say 12, we have here 12. So let's assume we want to have it also, like in the theory, between 5 and 10. Sorry, 5 and 10. So you can then simply grow here the results, and you see directly it's marked as out of range. You know, you should have a look on these functions because now the results are out of range. I've prepared here already something to be able to show you more. So I load here my metrics. And then you see I predefined here some more boundary values. And I do not use all the metrics. And now I can mark here the objects with a multiple, so it's control, and then mark the different functions or control and add another one. Go on the right mouse button, and then we have the keyword diagram. So that's a diagram which then just shows you the functions and the range in a different way of presentation. So that's the upper boundary, that's the maximum value, that's the upper boundary value, the lower boundary value, and the 0. And so you see here in a graphical way how your functions does fit to the optimum which you have defined. You can use this here for documentation or for presentation purposes or for a quick overview. But here is the part you have to work with, and you can then also go to the PRU and say, okay, I have to do something here with this PRU because the code complexity is too high, so I have to rework it, or I have to first analyze it, whether a rework is possible or not. And yeah, then you can use this. And for archiving this one, you can export the table as a comma-separated file. So just store it somewhere, and you have it available when you want to compare it later on with the next release or the next iteration or sprint result. So going back to the presentation, so that's more or less all what I want to show in this half hour for a quick overview. So you can have more information from the CODESYS development system online help when you have installed the demo version, because in the demo version the online help is also available. So I started the online help with the F1 button. I hope it's going quickly now. Yes, it is. Just make it bigger. And then you see in the add-ons section in the static analysis, everything what's part of the static analysis. And the most interesting thing maybe in the project settings, let me show it in this way, in the project settings. So in, for example, the rules, the coding guidelines, have all the coding guidelines described here, what it is for. A bad example when this coding guideline is violated. So you can do it with the coding guidelines. With the naming convention are some minor descriptions, and with the metrics also the metric itself, a short description, what it is and how it is calculated. And so you can get here some more information about all the functions. When you download the demo version, you can have some more information on our web page when you go to the Professional Developer Edition section, because the static analysis is part of this Professional Developer Edition from CODESYS. You can have directly some more information in the CODESYS store, where you'll find a data sheet of the static analysis. And later on, we will publish this webinar also on our YouTube channel, so you can revisit us here on the YouTube channel. So when you have more specific questions, or when you have some high volume orders which you want to place now, so please contact our sales department. The standard way for a single version is that you can order and download it via the CODESYS store. And as I said at the beginning, the PowerPoint can be requested at webinar@codesys.com. So some minor things to the CODESYS store. So to run the static analysis as a full version or as a demo, both of them are available in the store. Beside the other professional developer edition tools, UML, Subversion Connection, the CODESYS Profiler, which was released yesterday. So now we really have it available. So just have a look on the store to see some more about a real runtime analysis in your PLC. So that's a very good tool, I think. So we have there the test manager as well. And as I said, to run the demo or the full version, you need the CODESYS security key, which is also available in the CODESYS store. And I think it's a good invest in the CODESYS development system to have this CODESYS key anyhow available to use all the demos here from CODESYS.